Welcome to episode 72 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. My name is William Fizzpatrick, and happy Economics Christmas, folks. The wonderful time of the year, holly, jolly, and wonderment that is WWE Q3 financial results. Now, I know that some of our audience is probably not exactly all that interested in the financial workings of a billion-dollar corporation who should be a trillion-dollar corporation, obviously, uh, due to all of the missteps of one Satan himself, Vince McMahon and company. But oh, Satan and company have decided to bump away poor, lost, forgotten Ring of Honor from the episode 72 slot. Because of all the chaos that's happened in the last couple of months. That has unfortunately bumped the romantic, intimate relationship that the ROH Ring of Honor has had with the Donner Party of professional wrestling wagons. And we have to cover that on the next episode, or the episode after that if the sumos don't eat them first. Yes, folks, it's been interesting. I was really not sure how exactly I was going to be able to cover this, as after all, this is something that's a little bit in my wheelhouse and a little bit out of my wheelhouse. But if you want the entirety of the Q3 results, estimates, and at least 3 separate podcasts covering this entire result thing, please go follow WrestleNomics. Brandon Thurston, Chris Gullo, and company have done an absolutely phenomenal job of covering WWE's Q3 results over the last week. Go follow at WrestleNomics to understand the data, the hard data that is, and to know what in the heck I'm talking about. May the Barrios Bingo live on. So, you might be wondering, so yes, this is exactly what I'm going to say. Go take a look at the WrestleNomics data. Go look at the hard data, the hard results. Subscribe to their Patreon. Do everything that you feel you must to understand the economics of professional wrestling, even if you are completely unfamiliar or one of those fanatical devotees who believes in your favorite promotion. Understand the data, understand the results, and please go follow WrestleNomics and, of course, Brandon Thurston, who also does coverage of these ratings results, data, averages, median age results, all that kind of good stuff. Because this show covers the more social side of professional wrestling, so I'm more into the social economics, whereas Brandon is into the hard data and understanding of what exactly WWE has gotten themselves into this time. So yeah, WWE Q3. I'm sitting here at my desk. It is 11:10 p.m. at night. I have a large number of Halloween Snickers to serve as motivation. I'm obviously not going to eat them on broadcast, of course, but I'm just looking at the words because they're custom Halloween Snickers, obviously made out of fresh 100% WWE intern that failed the company this year, given the amount of roster cuts that the company and internal cuts that have happened in the entire company for the past 2 years. Frightful, ghastly, thrilling. I could best describe either WWE or a Charlotte Flair match. And I'm not exactly sure which one is going to be more painful or deadly for you. So yes, last year, WWE hired a new corporate guy. They actually hired 2. The first person got let go this past week. She was the CFO. And now the Chronicles of Frank Riddick have returned to the company. He is now the acting CFO who is going to be in charge for the next, I don't know, about 3 years. It looks like they got a contract down for him at this point. Obviously, he has still not been able to topple the charismatic enigma. Put your hands down, Jeff Hardy fans. We're not talking about him. The actual charismatic enigma WWE, the bingo master himself, George Barrios, who was fired from the company alongside Michelle Wilson a couple years ago in a shakeup. Now, Nick Khan, as the episode is obviously titled from him, St. Nicholas Khan has apparently somehow grabbed a hold of the Shovel of Infinity and done a Planet of the Apes style, you maniacs, you blow it all up action. He's literally Thanos snapped, or Triple H snapped in this case, the entirety of the NXT universe, most of the main roster, as well as numerous roster cuts. We thought that the 2020 roster cuts were bad. They did a cut of 18 wrestlers after their Q3 earnings report and conference call. Now, some of these cuts were to be expected. Obviously, people like Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik, who are on the list, wanted out of WWE. Some of the other ones, though, a little bit shocking. But we'll get to those in a little bit. So, what happened overall is that Vince has gotten bored of NXT. And you know what happens when Vince, or Satan himself, gets bored? Well, massive shakeup happens. See, Triple H, being the Garth Snow, Mike Milbury, every single horrific sports GM over the past 50 or so years, has proceeded to fail to provide main roster talent, for the sports entertainment empire of the world. I'm certain that many hardcore wrestling smarks just coughed out a lung with me saying those words. But yes, the sports entertainment capital of the world has been busy with the chaos and destruction, because Vince McMahon is not going to be out crazied by a pack of luchadors this year in terms of the wrestling standings of most disgusting promotional tactics. He's got that on lockdown this year. He's not going to let CMLL or AAA get anywhere near those awards this year. Okay, so WWE has been doing a corporate restructuring over the past year and a half, 2 years. And obviously, this is partially due to the influence of one Nicholas Khan, or Nick Khan. Because if you're going to inject a lot of poison into your company, it's pretty obvious that you're going to inject something with the name Khan in it. No, Nick Khan is not like Tony Khan, and he also has no relation to Tony Khan that we know of. Unless, of course, Vince has somehow managed to acquire Shahid Khan or Tony Khan's DNA and has managed to synthesize it into a ruthless clone. Because I cannot expect anything less from this company at this point. See, I'm not a hardcore WWE fan. A lot of people know that. I really think that the product is either middle of the road or just your typical consumer-heavy wrestling. It is your top-tier wrestling promotion to prove that, yes, to the mainstream world, yes, this is wrestling. Yes, it exists. No, we don't call ourselves wrestling. We call ourselves sports entertainment. We have all of these celebrities. Because if we say the word wrestling in front of Vince, he is going to literally rip our arms from our sockets and beat them to death with us. Because that is the Vince McMahon way. Satan has been trying to move his company away from the wrestling image since the steroid trials of the early 90s, and has mostly succeeded in doing so, although obviously any average consumer is going to consider them a bunch of carny wrestling freaks anyway. So it's a bit of a question as to why he continues to bother with that. And many wrestling purists are obviously in the same boat, wondering why are we not a wrestling company? We are apparently a sports entertainment company that does things like, I don't know, have The Miz somehow gain phenomenal cosmic powers on Dancing with the Stars by dressing up as Genie from the Aladdin. I'm certain whoever thought of that idea is going to get fired at some point, because the mere quantum endless existence of the idea of giving the Miz phenomenal cosmic powers is something that I don't even think that the Djinn from Wishmaster would be wishing for right now. He's over there crying in a corner, by the way. He's now no longer the most evil-related Djinn genie in existence. That would be the Miz. But in this apocalyptic Rybackian future, yes. So Nick Khan took over as a hugely influential individual within the company and began doing roster cuts the same degree that Jason Voorhees goes to summer camps. It's massive, it's bloody, and it makes every horror icon extremely envious. Massive, massive cuts involving the internal departments of WWE and also the roster. And I know that they're proclaiming that, oh, we have massive profits, we have wonderful profits. Ignore the profits, okay? Ignore those profits, because most of those profits are going to go off to pay their debts. And WWE has a lot of debts right now. It is also very clear that they're having to change their touring schedule. They are no longer doing as many house shows and are focused on the big, massive, spectacle pay-per-view events. Whatever those mean, because pay-per-view events on a streaming network like Peacock. it doesn't have the same ring as paying $50 to watch a pay-per-view like back in the olden days it was. Now you pay $9.99, some cases $4.99 to watch a pay-per-view. The cost is obviously going to be a lot lower, and the revenue is obviously going to be a lot lower because there are people that are going to be paying less money to watch your product. So they're having to do all of these mass media ideas, or in some cases, attempt to cause the Arab Spring to happen in Saudi Arabia again. I swear, every single time that you bring Vince into that country, you are literally asking for it, royal family. A guy who has a personality of an 18th century Arab warlord is not somebody you want to be bringing into your country on the regular. I mean, people talk about the whole Vision 2030 deal between the Saudi Arabian government and WWE, but my thought process is why are you investing this much money and giving $50 million a year to WWE to hold 2 shows in your country, despite the fact that you kind of realize you're dealing with the wackiest American company out there currently, and also dealing with Vince, which is probably not ideal for you. But again, so we have Nick Khan doing all of this roster restructuring. And throughout the time of roster reconstruction, most of it has been focused on the main roster, which is about as interesting as a dishwasher going on a rodeo-style rampage. It's okay. The main roster's fine. Roman Reigns has literally become Thanos. No, seriously, he has literally become Thanos. Apparently somebody, who has, I believe, since been fired, decided to show Vince McMahon the MCU films for some reason. Lord knows why you would want to do something like that. Introducing Vince to modern technology or films is not exactly the most ideal idea in the known universe. So yes, Roman Reigns has now become the tribal chieftain, and is now literally Thanos. No, I'm not making it up. He has literally become Thanos. He is now the most dominant heel champion in WWE history. Drew McIntyre has come back and has not had the... He has had a good run, an okay run. And also Big E is WWE champion now, which is pretty cool. That's an awesome thing right there. You know, if you're looking at this from the perspective, WWE seems to be going after the minorities. That's interesting. I think they may have realized throughout their economic data spreadsheets that most of the viewership of WWE are in one of several categories. Minorities, which refers to any non-white viewership, female viewership, and people who are in their 50s and 60s, although that's more reserved for NXT, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But it feels like the idea that WWE has is that they're going full tilt back into the, oh, we're not a wrestling company. We're a sports entertainment company. Yes, we are indeed a sports entertainment company. We're going to, showcase spectacles and talents for the waiting audience for our Peacock investors and stuff like that. A visionary entertainment company for the masses. Apparently, Vince has gotten in on an MCU kick and has decided to go scream at the House of Mouse. Huh? Oh, this little newcomer thinks he can take on the biggest house of the mouse? Well, unfortunately for Golly Gee, Vince McMahon isn't going to take on the power of Disney now, is he now? Oh? That was my best attempt at a Mickey Mouse impression, by the way. But Vince has decided in his infinite wisdom that he is going to try and take on Disney. Apparently because he may have gotten angry at a Disney executive or something, because he is now making all of these different deals. And Nick Khan was a key instrument in this Peacock deal. Because as we remember, folks, from past Wacky World of Wrestling episodes, Vince McMahon and television executives are one of the few things that is his kryptonite. Just ask Dick Ebersol. One of the few people to ever Montreal screwjob Vince out of a television contract. And this is because of the Gulf War angle that they did in 1991 for Saturday Night Main Event, which ended up being dumped on Fox Interesting how time parallels fly. We now have WWE on NBC Universal related network in terms of USA, who is furious with how Raw has been turning out, even though it has the highest ratings on that network. Fox is in an awkward situation where the media rights got acquired by them because they were desperate for sports programming during a pandemic. And even before then, they were desperate for live events style programming. Because apparently live events have become the catch-all of television networks in the streaming era. You can't just invest in TV series and hope that people will actually watch on the tube when people are literally barber chair cutting the cable cord out of their life. Just hope that they don't Genetti anybody through Windows at this point. Actually, yes, I think they might be Genettiing their cable and satellite providers at this point. And no, the cable and satellite providers are not crawling out of the window to get away from Shawn Michaels, even though obviously getting away from Shawn Michaels style booking would be imperative for them at this point. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So, yes, Vince has gone completely insane, as I expected him to. The rest of the corporate structure in WWE has gone completely insane, as I expected it to. And I am honestly loving the chaos at this point. I know that people are upset, and it absolutely sucks to lose your job to an extent. But people, come on, please. You know what you're getting yourselves into the minute that you signed on to this 7 levels of hell, okay? Okay. Actually, it would be 9 3/4 worth, or 10 16/4, or 666-5 worth. You are literally spiraling down the River Styx into this torrent of madness that is centered around Castle McMahon's skull. Soon to be for rent because they're moving their corporate offices soon. I think that the minute the WWE decided to try and move their corporate offices is when all of this chaos kind of started. It turned into this maelstrom of absolute insanity and chaos. And it isn't just Vince. Everybody else has gone nuttier than... let's see here. Nuttier than... In WWE's case, it's always very difficult to make comparisons. Nuttier than a Nia Jax Charlotte Flair shoot fight. Wasn't that a wondrous spectacle between those two? Oh yeah, Nia Jax is also released. The Charlotte Flair curse lives on. Or wait, actually, didn't she have a program with Carmelita at one point? Yes, the Haku Whitming of the women's division claims another victim, and this time it's a Samoan wrestler. What a shock. So, after the Q-Free conference call and Nick Khan proclaiming, if we make a profit, it's great. If we make mediocre profits, we still make a profit. That might not necessarily be an exact quote, but Nick said that during the conference call, and which is where his mindset is right now. He is essentially doing a cleaning house. Now, people have been proclaiming, oh, this means WWE is finally going on for sale. Or it just means that WWE's financial department, corporate department, merchandising department, and every other department inside of that company is so overbloated to the gills that any person who wants to invest in this company realizes that they are now dealing with 30 plus years, if not more, of excessive baggage. And also demonically possessed employees and interns, because of course, Jacques Seraf is working for this company at some point, and even he's probably fed up with all the roster cuts at this point. So, in this Amityville horror-related apocalypse in Stamford, Connecticut, Nick decided to do more roster cuts. Here's our list of cuts. Eva Marie, Nia, the greatest invisible wrestler ever, Jax. The starting goaltender for the Calgary Flames, Karrion Kross. Keith, Limitless Bearcraft, we really don't know what to do with his character, Lee. Scarlett Bordeaux, Ember Moon, Frankly Monette, also known as, let me think here, Taya Valkyrie, B-Fab, Grand Metalik, Lindsay Dorado, Jessie Camila, Zeta Ramir, Trey Baxter, Katrina Cortez, Jeet Rama, Mia Yim, Harry Smith, aka Davey Boy Smith Jr., and only Locan, aka Biff Busick on the Indies. Well, that's a list of talent right there. Obviously, people are going to wonder, what is your opinion on this particular listing of cuts, Fizz? Well, Eva Marie was basically a gimmick wrestler who was brought in to literally stir up a dynamic, and they decided that Doodle Drop, aka Piper Nevin, aka Bifer, aka I can't seem to find a proper name that actually, is my character, over her. Nia Jax, greatest invisible wrestler ever. Also a participant in one of the greatest shoot fights ever in modern times that isn't Simon Gotch versus Sin Cara. Dos, I should say. Do you know that Sin Cara Uno's back under the Mystico gimmick? Yeah, that's another wacky thing that I'm going to probably have to talk about in the next couple of weeks here. Karrion Kross. Probably the most disliked main roster member not named Nia Jax. Nia Jax was a wrestler who could best be described as watching a car crash in slow motion. Unfortunately for her, she was in a car crash a few years ago, which has limited her mobility. She has also been described as being incredibly unsafe in the ring. In all honesty, it's a Samoan wrestler. They're either going to be extremely proficient in what they're doing in ring, or they're going to be an unsafe liability at times, depending on how motivated they are. And she had a good tag run with Shayna Baszler. She's had some good segments, some decent promos, and was always at the upper end of the card in that situation. I mean, would you prefer her or the Woo in your main event segment? And now I just heard a large amount of screaming at this point. Anyway, the starting goaltender for the Calgary Flames, Karrion Kross, was another guy who was another person who was not particularly well liked by people who watched the main roster product. They thought he was bland, they thought he was boring, they've seen the Psycho character before. They're all screaming for Aleister Black to come back because he did the character a bit better. And they decided to dress him up in the most ridiculous-looking red gladiator outfit that they could come up with. I mean, okay, I get that Vince is probably and company are looking through the tapes of 1995 WWF, but I don't think doing the Farouk gimmick again was such a good idea unless the person is literally that delusional enough to think that they are a Roman gladiator. We already have enough of a Roman gladiator who is literally destroying the entire WWE universe. In the Roman Emperor himself, the beloved Roman Reigns. Okay, let's see here. Scarlett. Scarlett Bordeaux is Karrion Kross's wife, and she usually would accompany him in ring and basically do all of these proclaiming, basically it was a dynamic similar to many heel pairings of blonde valet with scary looking dude. The thing is that Scarlett was not with the character for the most period of time. In fact, she disappeared in NXT a couple months before he debuted on the main roster. So a lot of people were very confused as to why she wasn't being used. They've been trying to stay away from pro wrestling type characters, and valets and managers have been something that they have been kind of against. And Scarlett, unfortunately, found herself in the crosshairs. Also, she's blonde and looks similar to another released wrestler, Lana, from last year. So I'm not sure that they wanted to redo the same kind of gimmick with a character that is different in appearance, but also there's some similarities. Ember Moon. Ember Moon was always somebody who had a disaster run. She would have some really positive momentum, and then she'd get injured. She would do something great, and then she'd get injured. She was bouncing around like a pinball from NXT to the main roster, back to main event, to NXT, to main event, to 205 Live. Yes, that apparently still exists somehow. I feel like it was just a situation where they just decided, look, we've done as much as we can in this situation. Let's part ways, and you can go wrestle over in AEW, I guess. they've dumped a lot of wrestlers for veteran wrestlers because of the fact that they decided to once again do the edict of, we are not bringing 30-year-olds into the company anymore, and that includes anybody. I guess Vince got upset about the number of developmental wrestlers that haven't panned out in the system at this point, and has decided that, you know what, we're going to make our sports entertainers from scratch. This is giving me horrific WWE Labs flashbacks, by the way, folks. The kind of flashbacks that usually result in me having nightmares for weeks. Because every time that WWE says the words, making things from scratch, I imagine Vince attempting to bake bread. Now, I've baked bread before. It's kind of tricky. And I'm expecting him to at least cause a couple of ovens to break, either from trying to do the Kane Hellfire trick, or the bread literally exploding out of the roof of the house. Because it's Vince. Of course I expect it to be a full disaster. Let's see here. As I'm consulting the Snickers bars I have in front of the table, as we continue on the list, then we have Frankie Monette, also known as Taya Valkyrie. I wasn't sure about her hire when she was hired at first. I thought that she would be a decent mid-card heel, but there wasn't really a lot of upside with her. I've seen her matches. They've been all okay, but it didn't really fit the promotion that she was working for. I mean, I get it that you have Johnny Mundo Nitro Morrison, Lucha Impact dude, but Morrison has done well in WWE at this point because you have a nostalgia act that can be in the mid card, basically sort of in the same role as a Christian or an Edge or a Orton or a Riddle or any of the wrestlers that they have right now. And for those of you yelling about the fact that Matt Riddle didn't get released, he re-signed his contract in early 2020 before all the issues with him came out. And the last thing that WWE is wanting to do at this point is get into a legal confrontation with an MMA fighter when they're trying to recruit other MMA fighters and wrestlers into their oven, into the mixer at this point to create their own 100% artificially flavored GMO-laced heavy WWE sports entertainers. Let's see, BFAB. She was brought in to be a valet character and also as a wrestler. She had one disastrous match on NXT, the new version that we'll get to in a bit, and apparently didn't impress. Although she did get a contract signed, I'm not sure why that was, what that happened there. Probably just some communication issue or some kind. Grand Metalik wanted out of there. Lince Dorado wanted out of there. The rest are NXT releases with the exception of Mia Yim, who was technically on the main roster, and Katrina Cortez, who was also on the main roster with Sin Cara before he got released himself in 2019-2020. Mia Yim was another person who was a bit of a surprise. As far as wrestlers were concerned, they thought that she would be being used as a mid-card wrestler to put over other superstars. I think she's a solid wrestler. The thing is that she does have those injury concerns with her ACL. So they may have just decided that they wanted to go with a less experienced wrestler. I mean, they already got Tegan Nox on the roster. They've already got their Muda knees quota for the female side of the roster. Harry Smith was supposed to debut and feud with Drew McIntyre as a part of, and this is Davey Boy Smith Jr. from New Japan, and also Davey Hart Smith Jr. from the Hart Dynasty. He was supposed to re-debut, feud with Drew McIntyre, obviously, so this sort of Britain versus Scotland angle, the kind of, interpromotional feuds because of the WWE UK tour. And then they remembered they had Walter, and they could market the Walter-Cesaro matches on the UK house show circuit. So it didn't make a lot of sense to bring him back in, but he had a solid run in MLW, and he's probably either going to go back to MLW or he's going to go to one of the other promotions like Impact. Only Locan had been bouncing between 205 Live, the sort of the semi-main roster, and NXT. Solid wrestler, very good technical performer, fits a lot better in AEW, and I think they realized that and went, okay, we're just going to let you go. We're going to, once again, build our wrestlers from scratch. And that leaves us to the biggest release of the bunch, Keith Lee, who was known as Bearcat Keith Lee, after Bearcat Wright, the legendary old-school professional wrestler. Yes, I am aware of who that is, for those old-school wrestling fans who happen to be listening. Let's see here. What exactly happened with Keith Lee? Well, WWE didn't know what to do with him. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Keith Lee had the same problem happen to him here as it happened in Ring of Honor. For those of you who don't remember, Keith Lee was in Ring of Honor. He was actually going to be signed by Ring of Honor in 2015, 2016. He was out of his contract then. They went with Shane Taylor. Shane Taylor is fine. Keith Lee is a dynamic main event talent. Problem it has always been for him is that, unfortunately, the internet hipster wrestling influencer fan started to become big fans of his. Oh boy. And for anybody who doesn't know Satan, anytime that those internet hipster fans who love yelling the words like, it's lit fam, or do this, you do Brook X wrestler, push X wrestler, you cowards, on the bird thing, aka Twitter, usually leads to Vince going, oh, fantastic. I have just the kind of voodoo doll to inject a little poison into their lives. Because nobody's gonna out-crazy me, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, god damn it. Vince goes crazy, as he does, and Vince is very aware of their consistent yelling and shouting at the top of their lungs. So what he does is he takes their favoriteest wrestler, and Hunter also does this, and Gabe Spikulski, and everybody else who's ever worked in WWE Creative and gets offended whenever they start yelling about things that they're doing wrong, because they're already getting yelled at by Creative or everybody else in the company. So they decide to take a voodoo doll of that wrestler and torment it. Keith Lee, unfortunately, had a serious health issue last year, or this year actually, and almost died from it. He was out for 2 months. Prior to that, he went onto the main roster, managed to upset Vince so badly that he got sent back down to NXT to work on being a proper giant man wrestler. Yeah, okay. Sometimes certain wrestlers, especially if those who are influenced by the wrestling influencers, are going to catch victim to Vince, or to Hunter, or to Gabe, or to anybody else in the crate, or to Bruce Pritchard. They don't like it when people start screaming and yelling and doing all of this kind of Vince behavior, as I call it. I call it Vince behavior. What they're doing is exactly the same thing that Vince would be doing if he was a 20-something or 30-something-year-old internet wrestling smark. I'm going to give you time to imagine that nightmarish entity. If the Steve Buscemi "How are you doing, fellow kids" character is literally imaged into your mind at this point, then we here at Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, or me here at Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, apologize for the horrific nightmare that has just occurred in the mental image that has just occurred in that head of yours. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, so Vince decides to embrace his inner 20-year-old internet wrestling smark and decides to start messing with the surefire thing. The guy who is... every time I hear the word surefire prospect, I hear the words and I think of Kenta, and then Kenta got injured. And then everything just started breaking down. And then they went with Finney McBrogue as the chosen one, and then he met Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. That ended badly. And the guy that everybody hated, Roman Reigns, except for his diehard beloved fans that I hope to all Jesus in the Tribal Chief's wisdom. This means you, Heyman, that you have restraining orders on. It ends up being a situation where the wrestlers that the fans don't like are still pushed, and the wrestlers that they like end up in literal purgatory. unfortunately for Keith Lee, he ended up in literal purgatory. They decided to do the Keith Bearcat Lee gimmick. He didn't particularly like it. Now they're proclaiming creative differences between Lee and WWE, which I'm not necessarily buying. But Keith, you had every single warning sign and red flag literally planted above your head. You are an indie darling wrestler, a big one who was not made with every artificial process known to WWE Labs kind, not an original 100% pure organic, pure GMO, WWE infused, homegrown, homemade wrestler. And with a flip of the switch, suddenly you have a bunch of indie wrestlers getting literally catapulted from the remains of the burning fortress that was known as Isengard. Yeah, I probably should get to that at some point. But the minute that Lee got signed, I went, oh, he's doomed. That was my reaction. I went, oh, he's doomed. He's working in a promotion where if his fan base does anything wrong, Vince is going to find out about it and is going to torture him. In the psychological sense, mind you. Okay? Pushed, de-pushed, not interested in working with him, very interested in working with him. And it isn't just Vince, it's the rest of the people within the company. They like Keith Lee, but at the same time, he doesn't hold that WWE sports entertainer. Even though he is limitless. The problem is Keith Lee's character is primarily a wrestler. And WWE doesn't do wrestling. They do sports entertainment segments and throwing pies at people. Literal clown comedy shows. And driving smarks and the hardcore fans absolutely livid. I mean, okay. Jigsaw from the Saw films can think of as many tormented traps as possible, but honestly, Saw traps are nothing compared to a hardcore smart having to watch main roster programming. So for me, I watch main roster WWE on occasion. I watch Impact, I watch Ring of Honor, I watch pretty much every promotion I can when I am in the mood and I feel like it's a good idea to catch up on the product. For WWE, I think that their main roster is fine for the casual audience. It's obviously not going to be something that's going to appeal to the hardcore. But what they're aiming for, and what they have been aiming for the last year and a half, 2 years, has been sports entertainers. Or characters that are, that we can mass market on their, personality, obviously sex appeal, and every other marketable buzzword. Hence why Liv Morgan is getting a push against Becky Lynch. Oh yeah, Becky's back. Because you see, when the man has and her championship belt love each other very much, and some Celtic runes get involved, well, she had a kid. And her and Seth Rollins, congratulations. But she's come back, and she's now basically Hollywood Bex. They made her a heel to the enragement of the Becky Lynch fans. The proud nation of Becky Stan has been in mourning for the last several months, I think. She's been feuding with Judgment Abs, Bianca Belair, and obviously the Woo, which also led to a weird segment where they changed belts and they wanted to do a Becky 2-belt segment, and Becky and Charlotte almost got into a fist fight for real. And also Sonya Deville almost got involved. That would have been something. The ex-MMA fighter fighting against Charlotte. For real. In a Lioness Den match. Because Charlotte is apparently embarking on a shoot-fighting career. Obviously learning from the best of the craziest luchadors imaginable, given that she's in a relationship with Andrade. Yes, he is in a relationship with Charlotte. She has embraced the ungovernable luchadora phenomenally well. She already does the flippy stuff, so while WWE has been dealing with that chaos in their women's division, the disappearance of Sasha Banks, and Bayley unfortunately falling victim to the legendary NXT Full Sail parking lot by injuring her knee. But yes, chaos. Lots of chaos. Obviously, the usual kind of chaos that happens in the universe of WWE, obviously. So let's go to NXT. Let's see what's happened over. Oh my lord, you maniacs, you blew it up. Seriously, you maniacs, you literally destroyed Hunter's vision. I'm impressed. I know what you might be thinking. Oh, of course, Fizzy's going to snark about Triple H's universe literally being crumbled and Thanos snapped out of existence by St. Nicholas Khan and his holly jolly sleigh of budget cuts. But that's not necessarily what I'm going to do here. I'm obviously going to snark about it, but obviously we need to get our serious hats on for a little bit. Triple H has been in the hospital and has been recovering from an emergency health condition for the last several months. I did not literally expect NXT to turn into the plot line of Ocean's 13. I'm being serious here. Ocean's 13. And I did not expect Nick Khan to be in the role of Willie Bank. We have a moment here where Triple H literally has a heart problem, a heart scare, and it's exactly the same plot line as Ocean's 13, only without the Motley Crew to get revenge on Nick at this point. Yet. Of course, when the shovel gets out of the hospital, he's going to literally bury everything alive at this point. But yes, Isengard literally got Thanos snapped out of existence and is now NXT 2.0. And of course, NXT 2.0 has so many new faces. Most notably in this particular instance is Dexter Lumis from the old NXT 1.0 days, now being in a relationship with Indy Hartwell. Johnny Gargano being in a family with a now noticeably baby-fied Candice LeRae. She's pregnant. Johnny still being as annoying as ever and obviously now becoming one of the main villains in the NXT universe. He's going to be fighting against Kyle O'Reilly soon. The question now is that we have a bunch of expiring contracts. Kyle O'Reilly's expires at the end of this month. Johnny Gargano's is going to be expiring in a few months as well. On the main roster side, Sami Zayn's contract might be expiring within the next few months. And obviously the question about Kevin Owens, whose contract is also going to be expiring at the end of the year. Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic that's happening. So NXT 2.0 is a reboot, a reimagining. It is a 90s fueled Fabian Nicita nightmare of a comic. If you remember the dark age of comic books, that's the influence that NXT has decided to use for their 2.0 branding. Yes, seriously, they have gone 1990s dark age of comic books with pastel colors and presumably a large amount of Rob Liefeld related pouches are going to be on the ring gears of many a wrestler. I would assume that Xia Li is going to dress up in an entire outfit made of pouches at this point. And of course, it wouldn't be NXT without, of course, the appearance of a Braun. No, not that Braun. Braun Strowman got released in June. In one of the two shocking releases of WWE, they released both Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman as a cost-cutting measure. Or maybe they saw their wrestling matches and basically said to themselves, yes, we might be sports entertainment kookiness, but come on, we need a little bit better match quality than what's coming from Bray and Braun here. I mean, don't get me wrong, Braun Strowman is, of course, the most abominable Strowman imaginable and causes nightmares to ECW mutants alike. But Bray? Okay. Bray's character, when it's a basic character or when he's playing a deranged Barney and Friends style Firefly Funhouse co-host, is fine. It's good. It's fun. I love the Firefly Funhouse gimmick. I thought it was really interesting. The Fiend stuff? I didn't much care for that. I thought it took away from Bray's character, that there was this darker soul, a personality within, within Bray's soul. I feel like that was a mistake to do that. Why not just go with the children's... I mean, him being a crazed, deranged, Barney and Friends style Firefly hey kids, it's Firefly Funhouse. I mean, go with the angle of exposing the insecurities of both the heels and the faces. You could have a tweener character or somebody and have them be in this children's show environment of Firefly Funhouse. You can still have nightmare horrors and stuff like that. You can have Alexa Bliss talk with her doll. Side note, Peekaboo getting a nice gold watch run and being torn to shreds by the Woo is kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, no. The Brawn in question is Braun Breaker, aka Braun Rex Steiner. Of course, the destroyer of the true destroyer of the NXT universe would be someone named Braun. And of course, it would be a Steiner to inherit the mantle of literally Thanos snapping out NXT in existence, because the last bastion of the old guard of NXT, as established in the storyline, is everyone's favorite friendly neighborhood Sicilian psychopath, Tommaso Ciampa. Although he's been lately getting a lot of negative reactions from both the hipster internet smarks and from the wrestling community, weirdly. I guess because he doesn't want to be eaten alive by the main roster. And he's openly said so on repeated occasions. I mean, I like the story. I like that Kurusha is teaming with Ikeman Jiro. I remember him from Wrestle 1. He's an absolutely diabolical heel. When he turns on Kurusha, it's going to be an absolutely wonderful match between those two. All of these different characters. Apparently, somehow, Harlem Bravado fell into the Lazarus pits and has become Adrian Chase, I think it is. He's apparently some university college wrestler coach gimmick. Apparently, he has been possessed by the ghost of John Tolos, the Golden Greek, and is decided to basically now be the coach. There's also a bunch of other gimmicks. There's some kind of gambler character. I'm thinking this is is this WCW Worldwide? Am I watching in this situation? We also now have Toxic Attraction. Mandy Rose is now an NXT Women's Champion, who has joined this group of apparently Britney Spears impersonators. So apparently the NXT universe, or whatever crazy thoughts are going through the heads of Cornelio, Michaels, and Spikulski, him being attached to the energy source, providing all of the literal power that is powering the NXT universe setup. What are they calling it now? They're not calling it Full Sail because they ended that partnership. It's some kind of Capital Wrestling Center, I think it is called. So basically, WWE spent the entire year and apparently acquired so much Florida Man energy that they have literally burst from insanity. NXT has been completely destroyed into Rumble and has been reimagined in the image of the sports entertainer to bring to the main roster, obviously. I do look forward to the inevitable Otis Braun Breaker tag team. The amount of 90s level insanity of merging one half of the Descendants of the Natural Disasters with a Steiner is going to be quite interesting. And I know people are complaining about him not being labeled as a Steiner. Look, he hasn't wrestled 5 countries and completed a complicated math, equation. He's not ready to earn the Steiner moniker at this point. And besides, his character enough basically proves that, yes, I am a Steiner. I mean, it's scary watching him, work as this character. Of course, the true destroyer of the NXT universe would, of course, be someone named Braun. But yeah. Overall, NXT is going through this change of operations. They want to create wrestlers. They want to go full COW, they want to go full CA with what they're doing. They want to build them from scratch. Once again, I am the horrific image of Vince McMahon attempting to bake bread is going through my head at this point. Also Nick Khan, because the thing is Nick Khan is a sports agent. So naturally, we have found the Dick Ebersol of the WWE executive branch, who, as I said beforehand, Triple H was going to find that kryptonite at some point. Okay, there was going to be that kryptonite that, and the sports agent types, the Scott Borases of the world, were going to be that kryptonite because they understand the sociopathic nature of guys like Hunter. And so naturally, I think that when they brought in Nick Khan, it was with the express purpose of, one, getting this Peacock deal taken care of, and two, trying to curb the power that Hunter was amassing. And what ended up happening is that his original plan was to do global NXT. And if you're hearing the Empire March music singing in the background at this point, it was because he literally drafted up this Command and Conquer style worldwide world of, today we conquered Florida, tomorrow Britain, Scotland, Ireland, Poland, Germany, France, Japan, and the rest of the world will be under the NXT universe. So says the game. So he did this, and it was a situation where he proclaimed this a few years ago that he was going to do this international world conquering strategy. There's a photo up of Hunter with this world map of NXT centers placed in different spots around the world, and that didn't end up happening. Not just because of a pandemic, but also because of the national governments, some of whom are heavily invested in their wrestling promotion scene, going, oh, look at the funny little American promotion trying to come into our country. Well, this will be quite humorous. I mean, literally, WWE is having to, what? They get a $50 million allowance from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to do shows. I mean, good that you got them for that low of a price, even with the risk of potential Arab Spring-related insanity from Vince. But, what exactly, and the deal came about because WWE made a deal with the United Arab Emirates for a 4-year deal back in 2015. 2016. And so now they tried to do all of these different deals with different countries. Coming soon from the land of the motherland, NXT Russia. I mean, honestly, Russia having a NXT show is not that far away from the possible future. I mean, you could probably have the ghost of Nikolai Volkov in attendance, singing the Russian national anthem. Yeah, so the national worldwide conquest of the wrestling universe obviously was and wasn't going to happen because of the obvious issues of a pandemic happening. In addition to the fact that the way that NXT kept losing money every year, they're having to spend more and more money in order to upkeep when they want to just sign wrestlers for cheap that they can mold, personalities for cheap that they can mold into WWE superstars, and have a promotion that is mostly focused on sports entertainment. How thrilling is that, says the Snickers bar. Not really all that thrilling, unless you are an Impact fan, like I am, and I love wacky, insane wrestling, and since Raw and SmackDown has basically become Neo Impact, it's always fun to look at segments of the shows, and just wondering how much off the rails it's going to get this week. So yeah, they're building for Survivor Series, even though they forgot that Survivor Series existed for a few weeks there. They're trying to rebuild their feuds. They're trying to do some things differently. And again, it's all this lovely chaos energy from WWE. The kind of chaos that you would get from, say, I don't know, sumo wrestling. Yeah. sumo wrestling, is the kind of thing that the WWE seems to be aiming for. So Vince is apparently trying to out-crazy sumo. He's trying to out-crazy the JSA. He is trying to out-crazy the Luchadors because of all the chaos that's happened over the last couple of years down there. And he is apparently trying to make his company into the ultimate form of sports entertainment. I feel like I'm shouting profanity on air every time I say the word sports entertainment. But, it's like, okay, what's kind of nuttiness is this company doing? Because there really isn't any kind of creative direction that seems to be going on other than bring back people from the Ruthless Aggression era to wrestle in matches, like your John Cena's, your Edges, and everybody else in between. Do you want to know what NXT's demographic is at the moment? The one important demographic. They have attracted more 50 to 60-year-olds. The intention for the NXT 2.0 rebranding was to bring in those hip youngsters, the 18 to 34 demographic, into our shows. Or 18 to 24, or, youngsters. People with access to Peacock accounts so that they could watch all of this totally radical, awesome wrestling. Total awesome sauce, radical dude. Watch our champion Braun Breaker break another one of those old has-beens. See the lovely ladies of Toxic Attraction. Be bribed by our jiggly bribes. And all of the wacky young talent that we have here at NXT 2.0. Ride the waves, bros and broettes. It's on for a ride. Do you have any idea how many 1990s commercials I've been watching for the past few weeks to get the kind of announcer beats for that kind of segments? And I almost literally threw out my voice doing that, but... So yeah, NXT has become totally radical and rad, dudes and dudettes. And people of all the spectrum, all the gender spectrums. I mean, I think NXT is okay. It's become more watchable than it was beforehand. I mean, NXT 1.0 was literally the equivalent of me pulling my teeth out with a pair of pliers. Especially the epically radical Johnny Wrestling 30-minute matches. I did not think that somebody was going to outdo Sami Zayn and Seth Rollins in terms of annoying the literal bejesus out of me, but apparently Johnny Gargano took it as a challenge. Ever since I watched him wrestle against Andrade, where Andrade was literally wrestling a broom the entire time, I've been annoyed by Gargano. I'm glad that Gargano is now a heel. He should have been a heel from the start. He is literally the most irritating thing since sliced bread number 5. But honestly, I just don't know what they're doing with him. Are they going to release him? Oh, Lord, please don't release him into AEW. I already have to deal with the fact that Adam Cole is in that promotion now. Although he's doing quite well. He's actually in a position that is much more suited to his... to his talents. Nick Khan literally Thanos snapped NXT out of existence, has replaced it with some kind of weird Fabian Nicieza written Marvel Comics reboot of what NXT, which is obvious that they're once again going to the Marvel formula. And they're obviously trying to beat the House of the Mouse. Those pathetic fools. Those pathetic fools. I mean, it's so fun to watch an evil, maniacal, megalomaniacal company like WWE go into pure crazy mode and watch as they, even with their record profits, basically throw money on this burning pile over on the New Jersey Turnpike somewhere and watch as their competition, which is totally not competition. AEW is not competition at all. They barely mention AEW, but AEW is obviously doing a different type of product. They are basically a sports, they're basically an NHL expansion franchise. They're doing things a little bit differently over there. They're doing a wrestling product, which I'm certain is making people very happy. I mean, they just had the unimaginable. They had a CM Punk Eddie Kingston segment, a promo segment between these two. They're hyping up their feuds. They're bringing in wrestlers to restock on, on feuds and segments. They're doing well with the guys that they have right now. They're bringing in a lot of young wrestlers, ironically doing the very thing WWE wanted to do, but they're bringing in guys that wouldn't necessarily fit a WWE style. Your Lee Moriarty's and your Red Death Daniel Garcia's. And I'm trying to hold myself back from the pure joy because I'm going to talk about Danny. I'm going to talk about Garcia in a future episode, and that's probably going to be super hyped, more hyped than whatever Mojo Rawley has ever done. He got signed. I'm just going to stop myself right there. I'm waiting on bringing somebody in for that one. Somebody who is really enjoying AEW at the moment. Hint, Kane. We'll work something out on your schedule. And by Kane, I'm referring to Kane A. Knight. I definitely am going to be bringing him on a show at some point when his schedule opens up, or whenever that is a possibility. And I'm just going to say that right now. The time I do an AEW show is when his schedule opens up, because I got a lot of other wrestling promotions to talk about in the coming couple of weeks here on this November edition of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. And by the way, it's going to get a lot busier this month. I know that I've been inconsistent with the show uploads over the last couple of months. I've been basically posting 1 to 2 shows. My goal for the year is basically 15 shows till the end of the year, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how things go in November, December. And obviously, things being as they are, it's either going to be something that's going to happen, or it's going to be, maybe 10 shows, maybe a 12. I'm not sure at this point. But once again, if you want to know more about the hard data of the economics of professional wrestling, particularly WWE's economics for Q3 this quarter, go follow WrestleNomics at WrestleNomics to understand the data and to know what in the heck I've been talking about for the occasional segments. May the Barrios Bingo live on, of course. Why they took that away from us? I mean, when you had George Barrios as the guy who was the CFO of the company, there was this expectation that it was going to be very traditional, old school, 1970s WWFF programming, Worldwide Wrestling Federation programming, much like in Seniors era. But when that ended, obviously, it was a situation where you now have these CFOs who are going the company in a different directions. You now have your creative people who are going in a different direction. You have your merchandise department about to commit civil war against the rest of the departments because they now have overstocks of those Fiend plushies that they can't get rid of, even if they fire them out of a cannon and into the sun. Because the Fiend was selling merchandise. And I'm certain that the people who are in charge of merchandising in WWE are not happy about having all of those creepy plushies in their warehouse. It's like the time that they were trying to sell out those the people who have warehouses full of Ryback standees and Jeff Jarrett guitars probably feel a lot of sympathy at this point for their situation. The sudden firings, the changes in creative direction, all the madcap madness. But that's part of the fun of covering WWE for me, is that I generally enjoy the insanity of this promotion. That even at his old age, Satan still has it. He still has that crazy. He still has the insanity. He still causes massive amounts of pain and voodoo-like torture on the internet's Marks and Clarks of the wrestling world. How the media people are literally tearing their head out, and people who do financial projections going, what are you doing with this product? Seriously. It's ghastly. It's thrilling. It's frightful. But yeah, if you want the information and want to figure out what exactly is happening, Brandon and company have done free shows, including a debut show, because WrestleNomics is now with Post Wrestling. Congratulations, guys, on the achievement. Go follow WrestleNomics at WrestleNomics if you want more of that good information. Anywho, this has been a hour plus broadcast. It's been an hour and 5 minutes in. It is 12:13 a.m. on the 10th, and I think that we're pretty much good to go for me ranting and raving about what kind of insanity that Saint Nicholas Khan and his shovel. How did he get the shovel of infinity away from Hunter? Why are we in a Willie Banks style Ocean's 13 plot with NXT? But that's always the chaos of Economics Christmas. And I thank you all, folks, for watching this edition of the show. There should be more Wacky World of Wrestlings coming up. Episode 73 will probably be covering Ring of Honor, or Sumo, or New Japan. And you might see me ranting and raving about Yujiro Takahashi again. Should have just let the bunny girl pin Ibushi when you had the chance, Gendo. Because Ibushi decided to Yujiro himself in the main event. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, yes, we're going to talk about that segment, as well as other New Japan-related things and Sumo, possibly on the next show or the show afterwards. And obviously, I just did that teaser a couple of minutes ago for the possibility of returning to the land of the All Elite Wrestling and seeing if I could bring both, Senju and Kane for the show, or one or both. We'll see how it ends up. But yes, over the next month and a half, 2 months, I'm going to be doing a lot of different Wacky Worlds. So if you are used to it being a once a month thing, or a twice a month thing, or a 3 times a month thing, it's going to be a little bit more than that. But this has been St. Nicholas Khan and the Shovel of Infinity. Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, episode 72. You can follow me on Twitter at William Fizzpatrick, at Fizzpatrick14. That's Fizzpatrick 14, under the account William Fitzpatrick. And I will see you next time. There might be another show this week. There might not be. I'm not really sure at this point. But until then, folks, have yourselves a good rest of the week, good evening, good morning, or whatever you're watching this show on. Thank you for supporting Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. Go share some, some support to WrestleNomics. They just did free shows. Brandon's like Iron Man like 3 times this week, covering the WWEQ free stuff. If you want more specific details, like I said, go look at WrestleNomics. But for this edition of the show, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day or night, folks, and we'll see you next time. Bye!